Hi friends, it's John. You're on the JRB Tree Climbing channel, and I'd like to show you in greater detail how I tie the JRB Ascender Hitch. We'll be focusing on the 423 and the 523 variants. If you're not familiar, recently via a couple other videos here on my channel, I publicized a friction hitch I devised to find out if it had already been published. To the best of our knowledge, it has not. And so we're going to keep on going with the JRB Ascender Hitch, as I call it, and I'll recap the requirements and features and show you in greater detail how I tie it. So on the right side, I've got what I call a right-handed JRB Ascender Hitch because I can operate it like a hand ascender with my right hand, and the left hand, got the opposite chirality, I've got a left-hand ascender hitch. And this carabiner is optional and removable and acts like a handle. If you're not familiar with a mechanical ascender, I'll bring one up into view. This is a right-handed mechanical ascender where the load is placed on the bottom via carabiner, and we're able to advance it up the line and then remove it from the line. Can't be used in rappel, has to be removed during rappel. Well, the JRB Ascender Hitch operates in much the same way, but actually can remain engaged on rappel as long as it's tended down. And so it actually has some advantages over a mechanical ascender. Like any friction hitch must, it has a firm and consistent hold. It's relatively non-jamming. It moves easily after it's been loaded. It's breakable under load, and that's a unique property of all the friction hitches in the book and more that I have tied. It is the most easy to break under load. So I can have my body weight on this and still break that with just 2 fingers. It's tunable. So these numbers I call the 5, 2, 3. We can vary those and we can tune the hitch as we need to for specific applications. It's tendable. If it's used in a moving rope system, the carabiner, instead of being a handle, can be a tending device. And it is convertible. Again, the handle is not mandatory, it's optional. Friction hitch works great with or without it. And the last point, with the carabiner in place and not necessarily used as just a handle, the hitch can be operated in bridge mode, where a load is placed in this fashion, where it effectively could replace the bridge on my climbing saddle. My right hip goes here, my left hip goes there, and I can get very close to my tie-in point in that fashion. And it also has a unique property of really keeping it from not getting jammed when we load it in that fashion. Now, some things that you need to understand about the JRB Ascender Hitch: it's not tieable in the bight. We can't use, for example, a Prusik loop. We have to use a length of cord and then close it in a bend. We cannot use an eye-to-eye. So most friction hitches are tied with either a Prusik loop, we already ruled that out, or an eye-to-eye. This cannot be tied with an eye-to-eye. It has to be tied with a length of cord and then closed using a secure bend. The reason for that is it's just not possible to guarantee a uniform load on the eye-to-eye. It's got a lot more complexity than most friction hitches, and so I'm prescribing that it needs to be tied and then closed in a bend. In terms of ratios, like most friction hitches, we like our hitch cord to be smaller than the diameter of the rope. You're looking at 6mm cord on 9mm rope, and that's a good ratio. I like a ratio anywhere from, let's say, 65 to 75%. So I'll use 6mm cord on 8mm rope. I'll use 6 or 7mm cord on 9mm rope. I'll use 7mm on 10mm rope. Okay, so let's get started in tying one of these. And so let me just point out that the difference between the variants on your left and right is simply that the one on the right is closed with a hunter's or rigger's bend. I've got a knot tying playlist on my channel which shows you how to tie that. The one on the left is tied and closed with a sliding triple fisherman's bend. The finished product's about the same size, about 14 inches. I'll apologize to our international viewers. I'll be using all English units in this video today if you need to convert. an inch is 2.54 centimeters, and a foot is approximately 30.5 centimeters. This assembly on the right was tied using 5 feet or 60 inches of 6mm cord, creating about a 14-inch assembly, 4 plus 10. And the one on the left was created with 6 feet of cord, creating about the same size assembly, 4 and 10. It's just that it's the nature of the sliding triple Fishermans to be more greedy in terms of how much cord it needs to create that. I just want to give you those 2 points of reference as you start to tie your own. With 6mm cord, 6 foot is adequate, is a good length to cut to get started. You might need more or less for your actual system, and if you're going with thicker ropes, you might need to cut a little bit more. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to tie this 3 times. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'll move this one out of the field of view, and we're going to repeat this but on the left side. So here I've got a right-handed ascender. Let's build its cousin on the left, and we'll do this twice. So the first time, I'm not going to pay any attention really to how much cord I'm using as my standing end. I've got about 9 inches or so, just eyeballing it, and I'll place it on the cord. We've got to learn to tie this before we tune it and get it absolutely perfect and get the bend exactly where we want it for what we're doing. So let's get started with this. And I will be starting from the left, because I'm building an ascender for my left hand. It's a little confusing, but the correct terminology for these 2 turns I'm making right now are that the turns are the Z or right-handed chirality, and what that means is that if I were to overlay the letter Z, the center segment of that letter is an exaggerated version of the angle in this. So let's bring you in a little tighter, and I'm going to do that one more time. So I've got about 9 inches of cord, place that on the rope, I go around once, I go around twice, I drape that down in front of the standing end. So I'll pause there in case you want to screenshot that. I then take the working end, go around the back of the rope, and recognizing that my fat fingers might get in your way, I'm going to use this nail to show you what I'll be doing. I will be threading that down through to replace the tip of that nail on down. So let's do that. Just down through and out the back. Okay. Now, I take it out the back and over the standing end. So this constitutes what I call the bottom stage. The hitch itself is formed with an upper and lower stage. You can see it here on the right. So let's get on with the upper stage. I will continue to tie the hitch in the same chirality from left to right. So I've got my working end here, came out of that, it went down here and out the back. I want to go around 1, 2, 3, and I'll stop at 4 turns. 4 is adequate for almost every combination I have tested. But sometimes when ropes are wet, or if we're using particularly slippery ropes down in the 8mm range, I will need 5. And I tend to err on the side of conservatism. I tend to tie most of mine in 5 turns and only reduce to 4 if they bind too much. Now, so that's, you can see the 5 and you can see the 4. 5, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. All right, what's the 2? The 2 is what the step I call binding the helix. These 2 strands, that's where the 2 comes from. If I were to only grab 1 strand, that would be the 5, 1, 3. Why do I prefer the 5, 2, 3? Well, it's just a little bit easier to break under load, and you can put a little bit more load on the handle. So that's why I like the 4, 2, 3 or the 5, 2, 3. And if you noticed, I was pretty careful to leave things in the same orientation. because the last step, so locate that bottom stage, I'm going to be passing the rope, the cord through where that nail is. So I came through the 2 strands of the upper helix. I've got it on the left. This is my link segment on the left. I've got a gap on the right and a link segment on the left, and I'll bring that through the center of the bottom stage. That's the finished hitch. Now let's see. Now I did a pretty good job. It's fairly snug. If I exaggerate that, make it a little looser. See, now it's sliding. So how would I dress that out? I dress that out using the descending strand. Just pull on that, and that's how I set the hitch. Now, I will note that if you're using a cord that's not adequately flexible, you can just see I take the cord and pinch it. It easily bends in a radius that's smaller than that of the rope. If you're using a stiffer cord, it's going to be more difficult to tie and to get this fluent. And so whenever we're choosing a friction cord, it's good to get one that is not stiff but is very bendable. Bendability is an important feature in a utility or a friction cord. So now that I've got that in that state, I would finish it by closing it in a bend. And I'll go ahead and do that really quickly. This is not a lesson on the hunter's bend. You already know how to tie it. We'll consider knowledge of your favorite secure bend to be prerequisite knowledge. And so that's the finished product. And if I want to put my handle in, it goes, it's a left-handed ascender. It's going to go in this location. It's going to occupy that location. And because I think a beaner works best in this orientation, as a handle, I bring it in from the back. It grabs the rope and it grabs this strand on the left. And I can operate it in bridge mode like this. Okay, so we're going to tie that one more time. But this time, instead of using a carabiner as the handle for my friction hitch, I'm going to do something recently thought of, actually. It's not something I had tried when I did the first set of videos, and that is to use a rappel ring. So here I've got in my left hand a large rappel ring, and on the right a small rappel ring. You can find those online, and they turn out to be really good handles. But because they don't open, I couldn't put this on. I need to weave it into the knot as I tie it. So I'm going to repeat that build. I'm going to build the mirror image of this on the left, and this time I will integrate the rappel ring into it as I tie it. So now I'm going to get a little bit more precise with my length. I have chosen exactly 24 inches of cord, and I'm going to start with that larger amount as my working end. You can see that I did that same thing here, and what that does is it allows my standing end to easily flip through and go into bridge mode. So 24 inches, I lay that on top of the rope, and now we're going to tie the very same hitch. Go around twice in an upward fashion in the Z chirality. That's 2 turns, down, crossing that strand. And now I took care of this in advance, but I have that ring on the rope. It has to be on the rope. So it's already in position. And what's next is this, the working end goes down through these 2 strands. A little hard to do this and not obscure you, but I will do my best. Okay, and then around the back and overlapping the line as it started. Now you'll recall when we get done, our last move is going to be to thread a strand right through there. That's the finishing part of the hitch. I'll take that out just so we're remembering where it goes. I go up 5 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, 4 would work. I like using 5 for extra security, particularly if you wind up climbing in wet conditions. Then go up through the 2 bottommost turns in that coil. Get that dressed out. Fold it around the link segment and through. Okay, so you might need to watch that a couple times and maybe take a couple of screenshots, but that is the hitch. Before I close it, you'll recall that the carabiner encapsulates a strand. So I'm going to fish this strand down through, then I'll close it in my hunter's bent. Okay, and as I finish that, you see that it holds, and I can flip into bridge mode in this fashion. I'm zoomed in pretty tight there, but you can see. Okay, so that's a left-handed JRB Ascender Hitch to match the one on the right. Only difference is I've got a rappel ring instead of a carabiner. Now I will tie a right-handed JRB Ascender Hitch. Let's bring this one down into view again. This was the 5, 2, 3 closed with a sliding triple Fisherman's. So I will select 6 feet of cord with and this one I will take 18 inches, 16 inches as my standing, and I'll place that on the rope. So this is a little harder to stay out of your view here, but the first move is I'm starting from the right, so I make a right-handed ascender. I start from the right, 2 turns, 1, 2, down over, standing in, around the back. I will go down 2 through these 2 turns. Hardest part is staying out of your view and out the back. So that is the bottom stage. Double check, I've got my standing end, got my working end above it. I will now start the upper stage with 5 turns or coils in that same chirality. I'm going from right to left, which is the S or left-handed chirality. It's a little backwards in the sense that we're creating a right-handed ascender, but we're using the S chirality. Those terms are not necessarily commonly known, but some of my knot tying friends alerted me to use the proper terms, and I'll try to do so. So I took my 5 turns upward. I'm now going to bind the helix by grabbing these 2 with the working end. In through the front, out the back. Okay, and now I'll bring it down through these 2 strands. Got that one pretty nice and tight. Okay, and the last step will be closing it in a sliding triple fisherman's bend. I think I'll go with the double. Now this is going to be impossible for me to not obscure your view. Again, it's prerequisite knowledge to know how to tie this bend or your favorite secure bend. And I won't spend too much time getting this perfect and pretty. There we have friction hitch and the sliding double fisherman's bend. What I like about using the sliding triple fisherman's bend or double, I always go for the triple in a real climbing situation, is that it gives a little bit more friction here on the descending leg, and so it's even less prone to jamming, particularly after rappel. I don't generally recommend rappelling on a friction hitch, but if you do so, the extra friction caused by the sliding triple fisherman's even further prevents jamming here. So my preference, this is my preference if I'm not going to be using bridge mode, and if I'm using bridge mode, it would be the hunter's bend operated in this fashion. Okay, there you've got the JRB Ascender Hitch. Please let me know if you have any questions. Practice it. It's a complex hitch to tie, but please practice it and climb safely. Thank you.